All right, so this is review packet number 2. And the formula for arc length, anybody remember that one? Okay, so do we just multiply 5 times 110 and we're done? The formula only works in radians, so we're going to multiply by pi over 180 to change it to radians. And we're just going to type it in. It doesn't matter what mode our calculator is in. I got 9.6. Anybody else? Okay. Anybody remember how to change to a linear velocity, or how to find a linear velocity? Do we have an angular velocity right now? What do we have to do? It has to be in what to be angular velocity? Radian. So 1 revolution is 2 pi radians. Then you will have an angular velocity and we'll multiply by 10 inches. So we'll have inches per minute. Here's a good hint for the final. If either of those answers come out nice, then you did something wrong, because they should both have a pi multiplied in there, right? Because that would be what people forgot when we did the pretest. We'd already covered this concept, and some of you did attempt this question, and a lot of people just did like 440 times 10 or something. This is a really disgusting answer. Oh, yep, and I just wrote that really disgusting answer on top of the label. Okay, just kidding. There. Everybody good? All right. Look at your reference sheets. What can you tell me about this thing right here? It's a hyperbola because of the minus. The equations of the asymptotes. This is x minus h, so there's going to be an x minus 3. This is y minus k, so there's going to be a y plus 1. And then we need a plus or minus some slope in here. All right, which of these is a and which is b, and how do we know? Okay, a is always under the positive term, so this is a squared and this is b squared. Now the sheet tells you the slope when it starts with an x. It means it's opening this way, so it gives you the definition. If you want to do it conceptually, slope is always change in y over change in x. Which of these numbers has to do with y? Yeah. So this is going to be b over a, which is going to be the square root of this over the square root of this. Is that what it says on the sheet, guys? Did you find it? Okay. What's confusing you? Okay. It's change in y over change in x. That's just how I remember it, because it's slope. So whatever's under the y goes on top of whatever's under the x. And that doesn't matter which way it opens. That way I don't have to try to remember that. All right. What's this question? Remember how to find that? Yeah. You can draw the normal curve if you want, but you can use norm CDF. It says above a 50. So 50 is our minimum score. The maximum is, we don't care, just some big number. Where the mean is 45 and a standard deviation of 5. Anybody get an answer or know this one? If the mean is 45 and this is 50 and they want to know above a 50, remember this whole half is 50%. This is 34%. Okay, second vars. Good question. And so it's everybody above here. This is 84%, so this would be 16%. It's like 15.6 or something if you use the calculator, right? And if it is a free response question, I would take either the 15.6 or 16%, okay? Yes. Norm CDF, and then the minimum, maximum, or it's called lower and upper, and then the mean and the standard deviation. Is that better? Yes. We only did norm CDF. Yep. And that's the only one that's on the final. We did binom PDF only, but that's not on the final at all. So this is the only one you need to know. Okay? All right. Limit question. Tell me some ways you could try this. Okay? If you graph it, what are you looking for? Okay? What is the y value when x equals 1? I would also check like 1.01 and 0.99 or something, just to make sure it's not discontinuous there. This one does work by direct substitution. Anybody get an answer? 1 plus 3 plus 3 plus 2 is 6, 7, 8, 9. Square root of 9 is 3. All right. This is on the final, and it's a free response question, and it's worth multiple points. How do you find the components of a vector that goes from A to B? But which way do you subtract? Yes, so you say I'm going from -1 to 3, or 3 minus -1 is I'm going up 4, actually to the right 4. Everybody okay? 4 to 1, or 1 minus 4, is down 3. What quadrant is that point in? 4, -3 is over here somewhere, right? How do we find the angle it makes with the x-axis? Okay, inverse tangent of -3/4. What mode do we need to be in? Degrees. I got -36.9. Did anybody get that? Okay, is that in the right quadrant? That's not in the fourth quadrant? Yeah. You could leave it -36.9 because it's in the fourth quadrant, or you could add what? If you add 180, you'll be in quadrant 2. Yeah, if you add 360, you could also write 323.1, but I'm okay with either one. All right, this question's on the final. You are spinning a spinner 5 times. What is the probability that all 5 outcomes will be red? This is an independent event. Every time you spin that spinner, the probability of a red is the same. So it's 0.27 every time for 5 spins. So we can type 0.27 to the 5th. And you can either leave 0.0014 or you can put 0.14%. Either way, it's a really tiny percent. Any questions? What's the chance that you don't get a yellow? Not yellow would be 1 minus 0.23 or 0.77. And you're still spinning the spinner 5 times. So we're going to have 0.77 every time we spin if we don't want a yellow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So 0.77 to the 5th is 0.27 or 27, I guess it'd be 0.1%. I really don't care as long as you're put 27% will be good. Any questions? Okay, there is an expected value question, but it's nothing like this, and there's a couple on here, so I'm just going to cross this one out. 53 is a binomial PDF. It's not on the test. 54 ideas. I would do it this way, and you'll get it right. Is that a C or a P, though? It is P. It's 20P5, but I would just think of it as there's 20 kids. I'm going to pick somebody to get to win first, and now there's 19 left to pick from for second, and so on. Make sense? Yes. Okay. C would be if I were going to pick 5 people to represent our school somewhere. In other words, there's no difference in a group where I picked Abby, Bobby, Charlie, Denzel, and Ephraim all versus, I was trying to come up with an E, Eleanor, okay? But there's no difference than if I pick them in a different order, they're still going to the contest. Okay. Whereas this question, it is who can go first, second, third, fourth, fifth, so they're specifying an order. Okay. So that my ABCDE counts differently than EDBAC counts differently than whatever. Okay. But if I'm going to give them each $10, they don't care what order they were picked in, right? So then it would be 10C or whatever, 20C5. Okay. Better? Yeah. All right. I'm going to do 55. 56 is really hard to read. If you want to practice on some more on that one, just, I don't know, call this 3 pi right there where this one hits and try it. I think that's what I have on the answer key if you want to practice. But let's just do one together. The hard part here is that it says you have to write both a sine and a cosine. My suggestion is write the one that seems most comfortable to you first. The other one, the only thing that should change, okay, is a phase shift. The period is the same for both because the period does not depend on whether it's sine or cosine. It just depends on the length to complete one cycle. The amplitude doesn't change. The vertical shift doesn't change. All right. What can you tell me about this one? The amplitude is 0.5. What else? Okay, so most of us would look from here to here and say that's one cycle. Does that seem okay? You could have gone Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a hot mess. I would have stick with that one. So the period is 0.5, so B is 2 pi divided by 0.5. If you do 2 divided by 0.5, you get 4, and there's still pi. Vertical shift is the midline. Where's the midline at? Okay, which one makes most sense to you? You're envisioning that as a cosine graph. Do you want to do a positive or negative cosine? Okay, if you do a negative cosine, then you don't need a phase shift. So what would that look like? Yes, no? Amplitude is 0.5, that's out in front. It's negative because it started at the min and not the max for the cosine. The B goes in here, it doesn't need a phase shift. And it's down 2, which you could have started the whole thing out with a negative 2 minus 0.5 cosine 4 pi x if you wanted to move it out front, but all right. Now the only thing that changes is we're going to put a phase shift in. Now we do have to decide, do we want to do a negative sign or a positive sign though? I'm going to do right here. Would that make sense? We're going to look at that as a sign right there. Okay. If this is 0.5, then this peak right here would be at 0.25, and this midline ordered pair would be halfway to 0.25. It's 0.125 or 1/8. Just keep dividing in half. Remember, all of the quarter points, you don't want, what's the period divided by 4? All right, so we're going to change to a positive. And then we need a phase shift. What did we decide? Yeah, to the right 1/8 or minus 0.125. And then everything else is the same. The vertical shift, the B value, the amplitude. Better? There's a lot more practice on other packets, okay? I'm going to skip this one because we already did one. Is that okay? The schedule tomorrow is you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's just no advisory. Okay? No. Okay. What is the limit at 3, guys? As x approaches 3? As x approaches 3, the limit is, okay, the y value that it's approaching from both sides here is -3. Everybody okay? All right, I'm going to skip and go to number 60. Given the first term in the common ratio of a geometric sequence, find the term named, the explicit formula, recursive formula. That's really the reason I'm doing any of these, is because I'm afraid you still don't know that vocabulary. This one is geometric. So if you look on your reference sheet, what does it say for geometric? Is that explicit or recursive? Explicit. So what will that look like for this question? AN equals 3 times R is 4 to the n minus 1. Okay? You don't have to have parentheses around the 4 because it's positive. If it was negative, you would, or if it was a fraction, you would. So I'm just going to put them there. What's recursive look like then? Okay, it always gives the first term, which in this case was 3. In any order, I don't care if you don't put the first term in the front, you got to put it at the back. a sub n minus 1, and then all you have to do is tell me how to get to the next term. Multiply by 4. Better, Bryson? And it does say find the 9th term. So we could put a 9 in this first one, right? 3 times 4 to the 9 minus 1 would be 8. I don't remember. It's like some 4-digit number starts with a 1, 6. The fact that I remember anything about it is a huge waste of brain space. 1966. Oh, wait. All right. We can come back if we have more time. I'm just skipping to the ones that I really want to hit because Mohammed has to take part of the final tomorrow. So this one is arithmetic, and it asks the same thing. It says find the 52nd term, and then down here it says the 38th term. We'll just do the 38th term. We don't really care. But I wanted you to do explicit and recursive, which I'm not sure it says, but we're going to do it anyway. Arithmetic, what does that look like? Okay, so explicit would look like what for this one? Explicit, put in the first term, which is negative 22 plus the difference, which is 6 times n minus 1. And you don't have to simplify. Recursive, somebody? Take the previous term and do what? If it would help you to write out what's happening, it says D is 6. To write out a few terms, so it made more sense to you, that's fine. All right, how do you find the 38th term? Negative 22 plus 6, 37 times, right? 38 minus 1. We're putting it in here at 38 in here. I got 200. All right. This is actually on your reference sheet. I'm not sure how it came to be on your reference sheet. It may be at the bottom of a page in a box. Okay, the formula on your sheet says the area is 1/2 AB sine of C. So it's 1/2 a side times the sine of the angle that's in between those. Well, this one doesn't have exactly that setup. This one has angle A is 68, side B is 11 feet, and side C is 14 feet. So what are we going to do? Mode? Okay. Yeah, I have no idea if you have to switch back and forth if you do any graphing, yes. I got 16 and that would be square feet. Did someone else get that? I'm lying. I typed 168. Should be 71.4, yeah. I typed 168 instead of 68. Now we better, guys? All right. 66A is impossible. You can't have a sine value of 5 halves or even negative 5 halves. Just cross it out. I made a mistake. Do you want to talk about B? Arctangent. On your reference sheet for arctangent, it says it's Domain is here. Negative pi, or range is negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2. So what two quadrants can I look in for inverse tangent? 1 and 4. Which one of those would give us a negative 4? So it has to be in this quadrant. Tangent is opposite and adjacent, or x, a y over x. And we need to find the messy, I think, quadratic Pythagorean theorem. Does anybody get it? I need a radical. It says exact value. Yeah, it doesn't simplify. It's just square root of 195. So now it wants the cosine of that angle. So what is the cosine of that triangle? Yeah, I left off the negative. Which one should the negative be on? The 12, okay. And cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so it didn't matter at all. Oh, thanks. So it's 7 square roots of 193 over 193. Hope it's not that bad on the test, okay? All right, what about this one? And there's a reason I want to go over this one. This is a sum and difference. Can anybody find it real quick? Does it go sine, cosine, cosine, sine, 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 cosine, cosine? How does it go? Sine, cosine, plus or minus cosine, sine. What's the next step? Yep, go to your unit circle. Pi over 2 has a cosine of 0 and a sine of 1. So what's left? It's just cosine of x times 1. Okay. This is the question on the SLO portion that has all equivalent. Choose all equivalent answers. Do you remember where you have to look? Under the even odd stuff. Is there anything equal to plain old cosine under the even odd? There would be two choices to pick from for that one, okay? Well, you know what the SLO portion looks like, and it has very few multiple choice. Then there are 25 multiple choice questions and 7 or 8 free response, 10 free response, I can't remember. All right, rectangular coordinates. Whew, been a while. R theta. Guys, as soon as you hear R and theta, how do you think you need to make an X and a Y? We did months of what? Just makes me think of vectors. R cosine theta, R sine theta. Anybody gonna get that right? Yeah. Okay. So we have 4 times the cosine of 4 pi over 3 and 4 times the sine of 4 pi over 3. Okay. On your unit circle, at 4 pi over 3 is an ordered pair negative 1/2, comma, negative square root of 3 over 2. So this would be 4 times negative 1/2, comma, 4 times negative square root of 3 over 2. What's 4 times negative 1/2? What's 4 times negative square root of 3 over 2? Okay, I shouldn't have circled this one because it should be an ordered pair. Just like vectors, okay? All right. This question is on the final. It says find the eccentricity, and you don't get a tan reference sheet. This is what they all look like. This was either sine or cosine. You don't have to know any of that. All you have to do is remember this has to be a what? And then the eccentricity will be right there after you make that a 1. Can you remember that much? So what do we have to do to this one? Okay, so we'd have 5/3 over 1 minus 4/3 sine theta. And all it's going to ask you is, what is the eccentricity? It is 4/3, and it's never negative, okay? Eccentricity is positive. Anybody know what that would graph as? Hyperbola. You don't have to know that. All right. This is another one like we already talked about. Do you want me to do this one or not? B minus A. So 3 minus 1 would be 7 minus 2 would be first quadrant, which is really nice because then we know we don't have to add any 180 or crazy business. It does say we need to be in degree mode because it says degrees. Inverse tangent of what? Anybody getting an answer? 68.2. Thank you. All right, this question is on the SLO free response portion, and it's multiple points. Because tangent is always y over x. Better? Cosine, a plus b. Can anybody read that in our crazy rules? Cosine, cosine, minus sine, sine. I have no idea. I'm just making one up. It's cosine, cosine. Wow. I really don't have those memorized. So. All right. What are we going to need before we get started, baby? We don't need the angles. We need the hypotenuse. Anybody know one? 5, 12, 13, 6, 8. Okay. Could you have found those? Okay. Might take a little longer than that, but we would have found them. All right. So this one says, find the cosine on this picture. Adjacent over hypotenuse. Negative 5/13. Everybody okay? What's the cosine on the other picture? Negative 6/10. Then it says minus. What's the sine on this picture over here? And the sine on this picture? Okay. If I multiply these two, I get 30/130. If I multiply these two, I get negative 96/130. Minus a negative becomes plus positive. It adds up to 126/130, which reduces to 63/65. I'd take 126/130. I'd be excited you got that far. I don't think it's that hard of a question. I just steps. Yeah, you're putting in the whole value of the cosine. So, all right, this question is on the test. It looks like this on the test. In terms of the formula is part of the question, okay? The equations you need are part of the question. This particular question is absolutely ridiculous, so can I change it to make it more reasonable like it would be on the quiz? This it goes like a quarter of a mile because this speed is way too fast. I'm gonna put 40 feet per second. Okay. No, the ball flew a quarter of a mile before it came down, according to my calculation. No, not per second. Okay. Anyway, how are we gonna put this in? It says t initial velocity cosine of the angle. Can anybody tell me what that's gonna become? Everybody all right? From the question? All right, how's this one gonna change? We're doing this one. Plus, this one does have an initial height, right? 2.5. Okay, what modes do I need my calculator to be in? Modes, plural, yes. Degrees and parametric. Remember to get the T's, parametric. I'd really feel better if everybody was doing this question because it is on the final. Yes, you have no choice but to graph it because it wants to know how far does it travel horizontally when it hits the ground, and we don't know how long it takes to hit the ground, so we have to graph it. So it's t times 40 cosine of 62. And then it's negative 16t squared plus t times 40 sine of 62 with a plus 2.5. Everybody okay? Okay, appropriate window. T is time. Ball to come down. It took almost 15 seconds for the other because it was so ridiculous. But what's a reasonable amount of time for a baseball to come down? How long does the fielder stand out there? He doesn't stand out there 15 seconds waiting for it to come down. 5 or 6 seconds? 5 seconds? Let's put 5 because what happened to the last one when I did that one, it kept stopping in midair. So what did I have to do? I kept having to add more time until it came down. Okay, let's try 5. Now, X is how far away it goes. Let's try 500. That would be great plenty for a baseball, we would hope, but we'll see. How high does it go? I don't know. I'm going to put 100. See what happens. Oh, yep. I made it pretty small when I changed that number in there. Okay, let's change it to 150. I think this is like I've now made it a pee-wee ball game or something because it's now only goes how far before it comes down? Okay. T times 40 cosine 62 in degrees. Negative 16t squared plus t times 40 sine of 62 plus 2.5. If it gives you an error, do the go to and see what it says. Here, did you put a squared in? 0, 5.1. Negative 10 to 100 by ones and negative 10 to 150. I have 50. This is not the greatest window, but it goes about 43.2 feet away. Okay, it's not an exact answer, but as close to the ground as I can get. I have a y value of negative 0.9, and that makes the x about 43.2 feet away. And there's some leeway on that question, okay? If you wanted to go and type in, 2.9 seconds, whoops, 2 point, what was it? 2.3? So 2.29? I don't know. Doesn't matter. As long as you're close, I'm going to be happy. All right. I'm moving on to, actually, I want to do this question. Let's do 78. This is on the final. It is a free response question. There's no guessing. Okay. The proper way to do this question would be to say there is 3 winning tickets out of 500. So there's a 497 out of 500 chance that I'm going to lose $10. Okay? But there is a 1 out of 500 chance that I'm going to win. Now, this is where you got to be careful. If I win $1,000, but I paid $10, I'm really only getting $9.90. There's a 1 in 500 chance I win $500, but I paid $10 for the ticket, so I won $4.90. And there's a 1 in 500 chance that I win $250, paid $10 would be $240. Now, that's the way the concept is taught. We discussed that for these ticket questions, you could just pretend you bought all the tickets. So if I bought $500 worth, 500 tickets at $10 a piece, I'm in the hole $5,000. I'm going to win back a $1,000 prize, a $500 prize, and a $250 prize. I'm still in the hole, yes? And then you would have to divide that by 500 to get the average per ticket. Anybody get an answer? It's negative 650, okay? But it will work if you just say, I bought all the tickets, I won all the prizes, and I came out this far ahead or behind, and then divide by the number of tickets.